Carroll O'Connor buried his only son before dying of a broken heart himself. Gene Stapleton walked away from Edith Bunker and never once looked back. And the kid the whole country called Meathead was stabbed to death by his own son. This is what really happened to the cast of All in the Family. In 1971, Carroll O'Connor walked onto a small set dressed to look like a working-class living room in Queens and changed American television forever. He was 46 years old, not a young man by Hollywood standards, but a seasoned character actor who had spent years moving through supporting parts in film, on stage, and on television, waiting for a role large enough to hold everything he could do. Archie Bunker was that role. The character was designed as satire, loud, stubborn, prejudiced, and painfully sure of himself. But what made Archie dangerous was that millions of viewers also recognized him. He was not a cartoon villain. He was familiar, sometimes funny, sometimes cruel, sometimes human in ways that made audiences uncomfortable. All in the Family became one of the defining shows of the 1970s, topping the Nielsen ratings for 5 consecutive seasons. O'Connor won 4 Emmy Awards for playing Archie, then carried the character into Archie Bunker's Place, which ran until 1983. His career did not end with Archie Bunker. In the late 1980s, he proved he was not trapped inside the role that had made him famous. He returned to television as Sheriff Bill Gillespie in the drama series, In the Heat of the Night. That role brought him another Emmy Award and confirmed something important. He was never just Archie Bunker, but the most defining chapter of his life had nothing to do with awards. In 1995, his only son, Hugh O'Connor, died by suicide after a long struggle with drug addiction. Carroll did not retreat from the pain. He became publicly outspoken about addiction, drug suppliers, and accountability. When the man he blamed for supplying drugs to his son sued him for defamation, a jury sided with O'Connor. Carroll O'Connor died on June 21, 2001, after suffering a heart attack connected to complications from diabetes. He was 76 years old. His on-screen wife was quietly preparing to make one of the most difficult exits in television history. Some performers don't need to raise their voice to own a scene. Gene Stapleton was one of them. As Edith Bunker, she became the heart of All in the Family. Warm, guileless, and quietly wiser than almost anyone around her understood. Where Archie was noise and certainty, Edith was patience and compassion. That contrast became the emotional engine of All in the Family. Stapleton was already an experienced stage actress when the series premiered, and what she brought to Edith was more than a voice, a laugh, or comic timing. It was humanity. She made Edith funny without making her small, and gentle without making her weak. The role earned her 3 Emmy Awards and 2 Golden Globes. But success came with a cost. Edith became so beloved that many viewers forgot there was a serious, intelligent actress underneath the character. By the end of All in the Family, Stapleton felt Edith had reached her natural limit. When the series continued as Archie Bunker's Place, she appeared briefly to help the transition, but she no longer wanted to remain a regular presence. Then came one of the most emotional choices in sitcom history. Edith's death was handled off-screen in Archie Bunker's Place. The character died from a stroke, leaving Archie to face the silence she left behind. Stapleton moved on to stage work, television films, guest roles, and selective appearances. She was not chasing relevance. She had made peace with the role and stepped away with rare clarity. Gene Stapleton died on May 31, 2013, at 90 years old. She gave television one of its kindest souls, and then proved she was much more than the character America thought it knew. But the next member of the Bunker household would have one of Hollywood's greatest second acts, only for his life, decades later, to end in a tragedy almost too shocking to believe. When Rob Reiner first appeared as Michael Stivic, he was only 23 years old. He was also the son of comedy legend Carl Reiner, which meant the assumptions came quickly. Some people saw a famous last name before they saw the performer, but Reiner proved himself almost immediately. As Meathead, he became one of the most recognizable foils in sitcom history. Young, argumentative, self-righteous, funny, and often more like Archie than either man would ever admit. Reiner won 2 Emmy Awards for the role, and for 7 seasons he helped turn the Bunker living room into one of television's most important battlegrounds. Then he left the show and changed his career completely. Rather than chasing another sitcom role, Reiner stepped behind the camera. What followed was a directorial run most filmmakers would envy. This is Spinal Tap in 1984, Stand By Me in 1986, The Princess Bride in 1987, and many more. He didn't just make movies, he made classics that audiences still return to decades later. However, the final chapter of Rob Reiner's life was marked by a tragedy that shocked the world. On December 14, 2025, at the age of 78, Rob and his wife Michelle were found stabbed to death in their Los Angeles home. In a devastating turn of events that no scriptwriter could have imagined, their son, Nick Reiner, who had struggled publicly with addiction and mental health for years, was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The kid from Queens grew up, changed the world, and left behind a legacy that even the most tragic ending cannot erase. And the young woman who played his wife on screen took a quieter road, but one no less worth following. Sally Struthers was 23 years old when she became Gloria Bunker, the daughter caught between Archie's old-world certainty and Mike's restless need to challenge it. She was often the emotional center of the conflict, and Struthers played her with a skill that was easy to overlook because it felt so natural. Her work earned her 2 Emmy Awards for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series. Gloria could have been a simple sitcom daughter, but Struthers made her feel real, funny, vulnerable, frustrated, and deeply human. After All in the Family, she returned in the short-lived spin-off Gloria in 1982. Then later found a new generation of fans as Babette Dell on Gilmore Girls. It was a smaller, warmer kind of role, but it proved she had never stopped growing as a performer. She also became widely known for her charity work with international children's organizations, appearing in public campaigns throughout the 1980s and 1990s. In 2026, Sally Struthers is 78 years old and still active, especially in theater, not chasing the spotlight, but clearly still devoted to the craft. Gloria Bunker found her own way forward, and the neighbor who sparked some of the show's most memorable confrontations had a story far less comfortable than anything written for him on screen. Sherman Hemsley arrived on All in the Family in 1973 as George Jefferson, Archie Bunker's next-door neighbor, and one of the few characters who could challenge him with the same force he gave out. George was proud, sharp, ambitious, and never intimidated by Archie. Their scenes worked because George was not simply there to react to Archie's prejudice. He pushed back, he exposed it, and in some ways he mirrored Archie too. Another stubborn man with strong opinions, quick judgments, and a voice that could fill the whole room. That made him one of the show's most important additions. Whenever George Jefferson walked into the Bunker household, the comedy got louder, but the social tension got sharper. Before that breakthrough, Hemsley had spent years working at the post office while building himself as a stage performer. He was not an overnight discovery. He was a working actor who waited a long time for the right door to open. And All in the Family opened it. The character became so strong that CBS eventually spun George and Louise into the Jeffersons in 1975, giving Hemsley the role that would define the rest of his career. After that, he continued working steadily, most notably on Amen from 1986 to 1991. Sherman Hemsley died on July 24, 2012, at 74 years old from lung cancer. And his on-screen wife, the woman who walked through that door with him, left behind a legacy that stands entirely on its own terms. Isabelle Sanford was 53 years old when she first appeared on All in the Family as Louise Jefferson, the Bunker's neighbor, and one of the few people who could bring calm into a room full of Archie Bunker's noise. Louise was patient, dignified, and quietly funny. She did not need George's volume to make an impact. In fact, before George Jefferson became the larger-than-life force audiences would remember, Louise was already there, steady, observant, and impossible not to like. That made her presence on All in the Family important. Whenever Louise entered the Bunker household, she brought a different kind of strength. She could challenge Archie without shouting over him. She could soften a scene without making it weak. And when Sherman Hemsley finally joined her as George, the Jefferson family became one of the strongest pieces of the show's world. In 1975, that strength carried over into the Jeffersons, where Sanford's Louise became the emotional backbone of the series. George could be loud, proud, and impossible, but Louise kept him human. Then, in 1981, Isabelle Sanford made history. She became the first Black woman ever to win the Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series. After the Jeffersons ended, she continued appearing in film and television, always on her own terms. Isabelle Sanford died on July 9, 2004, at 86 years old. Danielle Brisbois was 9 years old when she joined All in the Family in 1978 as Stephanie Mills, the young niece who came to live with the Bunkers. Holding her own opposite Carroll O'Connor was no small task, but she quickly won audiences over with a natural, unforced presence. She continued the role through Archie Bunker's Place, staying on screen until 1983. But unlike many child actors, Brisbois did not disappear after the spotlight moved on. She reinvented herself completely, not in front of the camera, but behind the music. After working with the band New Radicals, she became a successful songwriter. She co-wrote Natasha Bedingfield's Unwritten, one of the defining pop anthems of the 2000s, and later earned an Academy Award nomination for co-writing Lost Stars from Begin Again. In 2026, Danielle Brisbois is 56 years old. Most fans of All in the Family may never connect Stephanie Mills with those songs, but her second act became one of the most impressive reinventions in the cast. Her story is one of genuine reinvention, and it stands in sharp contrast to a performer who survived something far heavier than a career transition before she ever walked through the Bunker's front door. Betty Garrett was 53 years old when she joined All in the Family as Irene Lorenzo, the Bunker's neighbor, sharp and warm and immediately vivid. She came to the role carrying a history that her new audience largely didn't know. In the early 1950s, Garrett and her husband, actor Larry Parks, had been swept into the Hollywood blacklist. Parks was called before the House Un-American Activities Committee and under enormous pressure named names. It effectively ended his career. Garrett's own work was curtailed severely for years, a forced professional exile that lasted long enough to permanently alter the trajectory of what she might have built. By the time All in the Family came along, she had survived a period of erasure that would have finished lesser careers entirely. After All in the Family, she appeared as Edna Babish in Laverne and Shirley, a recurring role that introduced her warmth and precision to an entirely new generation of viewers. She continued acting through the 1980s and beyond with a professionalism that never dimmed. Betty Garrett died on February 12, 2011, at 91 years old. Vincent Gardenia was born Vincenzo Scognamiglio in Naples, Italy, and came to New York as a child, where he spent decades building one of the most deeply respected careers in American character acting. When he joined All in the Family in 1973 as Frank Lorenzo, gruff, decent, the kind of man who meant well even when he expressed it badly, he was 53, and the recognition he was about to receive was long overdue. His performance on the show brought him a new generation of admirers, but it was his work in film that truly defined his legacy. He received an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor for Bang the Drum Slowly in 1973, the very same year he joined the All in the Family cast. Then, 14 years later, he received a second Oscar nomination for his role in Moonstruck in 1987, playing opposite Cher with a grounded, aching naturalism that was impossible to look away from. 2 Academy Award nominations, 14 years apart. Very few character actors in the history of Hollywood can claim that kind of sustained, high-level recognition. Vincent Gardenia died on December 9, 1992, of a heart attack at 72 years old. All in the Family premiered more than 50 years ago, and yet watching it now, the arguments still feel unresolved, the laughter still lands, and the people still feel real. The actors who inhabited that small Queens living room weren't just playing characters. They were holding up a mirror to America, week after week, and asking it to look. Some went on to build extraordinary things. Some were gone far sooner than they should have been. All of them left something behind that time has not diminished. That in the end is what the great ones always do.